Hi friends! So today I'm going to show you how I took the hardcover of one of my absolute favorite books, one of my favorite series, Spark of the Everflame, and I updated the hardcover to just give it a little something because it just felt like a fun project to do. So the first thing I did was I didn't know if I was going to buy the book actually. I was at Barnes & Noble, I had a gift card, and I decided to look at it because I already have the ebook and the audiobook, so I didn't necessarily need the hardcover. But when I saw it, it was absolutely gorgeous. It has obviously this slip in the cover, but it came in this beautiful embossed hardcover. And I decided when I was looking at it that I could barely see the words Spark of the Everflame. And I just thought like this could be a fun little project for me to make this book, one of my favorite books, a little bit more unique for my bookshelf. So I'm going to show you how I added some black to the front and a little quote on the back. I'm going to show you how I designed it, how I did it, all the things that you need for this fun little project. And I'm super excited to walk you through it. It's a really easy project for you book lovers and something you could do with honestly any book that you have that you just feel like could use a little something extra. So let's get into it.
When I took the sleeve off of this book, I fell in love with the cover, but maybe it's because I'm getting old, but I like literally couldn't see the words on it. So I went in with my markers. I just used what I had on hand, but since the spine was black and there was a lot of this like black kind of doodly artwork throughout the book, I wanted to use black so it would match. I'm using the Pigma Micron pens, and this is just a variety pack that I had, but I do recommend having different sizes. I used the thin markers, the two smallest ones, to do the outlines. And then you have to color it in, but your look is only going to be as crisp as the lines you can draw. Now, I am not the best, and you'll see it's not going to be perfect for me, but it was still super fun to create this with these pens. So what I did was I basically outlined each letter and then went in with a thicker pen, one of the bigger ones, the wider tipped ones, to actually color in the letters. Now, this does take quite a bit of time. It took me probably an hour of work to get each letter done, and Spark is definitely the best. And it kind of goes downhill from there because my hand was getting tired. I wasn't taking enough breaks. I would definitely, build in some time and break up the work because you really do want it to look as crisp as possible. So I outlined each letter, colored them in, and once I was actually all done with each of the letters, I went even back over it again, like after it dried, because there were some spots that weren't full, after it dried. So just do your best and fill in each letter.
So doing the cover was really easy. The hardest part obviously is staying in the lines, but you probably have pens and supplies that you can use. I wasn't planning on doing anything on the back, and I actually cut just the quote out, and I was like, this looks boring. We can do better. It took me a little bit of time to figure out the design because as I do all of my book binding and I create these covers, it's like I want them to reflect the book. And especially a book that I really like I want it to fit the vibe of the story. So I spent a lot of time looking for fonts and images on Creative Fabrica and frames to try to make my own. But after a lot of searching, I ended up just going into Canva and creating the design and finishing it up in Silhouette Studio. So let me show you the design process, how I cut it with the heat transfer vinyl, and how it all came together.
So to me, I feel like there aren't that many videos that go into the actual cover designs of these photo or these book covers. Now, this is a simple back end of the book versus a whole cover, and I have other videos that'll go into that. But I was searching Creative Fabrica for different trees and different frames, and there was stuff there, but I ended up actually using Canva to make this design. First, I created a design the size of my book, so 5.7 inches and 9.75 inches or whatever it is you measure on your book. And then I didn't know exactly what I wanted. So I was looking at vintage frames and flourishes and certain things for the back. But then I decided that I didn't want a back rectangle because it wouldn't really match the front. So I ended up thinking that an arched frame would look really cool. I had to go through a bunch of different ones to see the vibe. I got a tree in there, so I could sort of have it coming out the bottom, which is the look I had in my mind. But mostly it's just playing around and finding what I like. Does it match the book? Does it look okay? So finally I settled on an arch frame that I searched in Elements, and then added text so I could have a general idea of what this would look like once I were to cut it and put it on the back. So I ended up saving this as a transparent PNG. I have the pro version of Canva, so I could save it as an SVG, but I find that cutting those, it doesn't always work great. So I separated all my images, I downloaded it and saved it with a transparent background, and then imported that into Silhouette Studio. You could do the same stuff in Cricut Design Space or with whatever cutter that you have, but Silhouette Studio automatically outlines your PNG files to cut. So I find that this works a little bit better than saving it as an SVG. And I just like to zoom in and out, make sure that all my cut lines look normal. I wanted to take out the bottom portion of that archway, so it would just be the tree down there. So you see that small rectangle I have? I grouped everything else and the rectangle and highlighted it and used the subtract feature so you can see that it disappears. A lot of this is just me, highlighting, grouping, getting everything the way I wanted it. Now, I did download the image with text, but I knew I wasn't going to actually use that text. I wanted to find the right font. I wanted to space out my words and what letter we're going to start with. It's just basically trial and error to figure out what looks good. So I ended up using Bookman old style font, and I made it, center and black, and played around with where I wanted each line to start, with what word and everything like that. So I played around, resized it, made it so I liked it. And then my Silhouette is really bad at cutting small things. So I ended up, the most important thing I did here, obviously, after I got this all lined and ready, was I used the offset feature. So especially that tree with all those teeny tiny little leaves, I knew that it would be hard to cut and weed. So I ended up using the offset feature. So once you highlight it, you can go to the offset menu, and you just need to do a very little one, like 0.05. And then you can see that I end up doing that and move the other pieces away. So they're just a little bit thicker, and it just will make it easier to cut. So the other thing that I did was draw a rectangle and get everything lined up. So I did the rectangle the exact size of the cover of the book. I then put my image right on top of it, just resizing and making sure I like how it's going to look once I actually cut it. So you can see me here making that back rectangle white, sending it to the back, and just making sure I like the size. That's one way to do it for you. So you don't have to actually cut it until you're for sure that it's the right size and it'll be the right placement. So here I'm finally doing the offset I was talking about earlier. You can see me moving away the old pieces, and it just makes all the lines a little bit thicker, which makes it easier to cut and weed and place. So because I'm using heat transfer vinyl, I mirror it and use my Silhouette to cut the design. You can use any heat transfer vinyl that you have. I'm using a matte white. This brand that I have is fine. It works well, but it's really hard to weed. Like, it's really, really sticky. And I have this design that took like an hour for me to weed. So that was one downfall of this project, but we made it work. I just went through and carefully made sure that I got each piece. I didn't leave anything inside of my O's and R's and E's, but I just went through and carefully weeded the design. The next hardest thing of this project is making sure that it is all lined up. I'm really just not always the best at doing that because I always rush and do things quickly. So I ended up, and my head's about to get in the way here, but I ended up folding it and pinching it at the top and bottom, above and below to the design, so I could try to get it in the middle as best as I can. I'm sorry it's going in and out because my head's in the way, but I literally measured and replaced like 14 times because I was like, I just really want this book to turn out perfectly. It's one of my favorites, and I finally got it placed. I'm using a little hand iron on the lowest setting with some pressure and letting it attached to the book. Now, the directions on your heat transfer vinyl might change based on what you're using. The one I have here is a cold peel, so I had to wait a long time for it to fully cool, and then I can peel away my transfer sheet. And it was so nice. I loved how it turned out. I ended up also painting the book edges. Now, I repeat, do not use blue tape. Like, literally don't. It ended up ruining this project. It gets fine, but it didn't work out great. If you want to use tape, pre-stick it to your pants or your shirt or something so it takes away some of that adhesive. But I would probably just risk not taping it at all and just painting carefully. So I ended up putting it back in my book press. I grabbed those 2 sheets of cardstock just to make sure that I didn't, ruin the outside edges as it was pressed. I used some 400 grit sandpaper to lightly sand the pages. I did the same thing for the top, the bottom, and the side. So once I sanded it and cleaned it, I used my acrylic paint. I ended up using just like a Craft Smart metallic silver. I went to the store and bought 3 different paints. I wasn't exactly sure what I was going to use. I got like a light gray, a darker silver, a light silver, a dark silver, and a black. I ended up going with the light silver. I think that it worked well with the vibe of the off-white book and the fact that Diem in the book has her silvery magic. Eventually, she uses that like silvery light. So I thought that it worked well with the book. So I painted 2 very light coats on each side. I let each coat dry before I turned the book over to do, the other side. But I just carefully used it. And then unfortunately, as I was peeling off my tape, you can see here that the book came with it. It was really, really unfortunate. I was very sad. But it's fine. It's just going to go on my bookshelf. I even messed up my HTV a little bit there. So that's why I don't recommend using blue tape. I think it would be very easy to paint within the lines. Or if you're going to use blue tape or something, stick it to your pants a couple times so it's not too sticky. I went in and touched up a few of the places that got a little ruined. But in the end, it was a really, really fun project. I love how it turned out. The pages will stick together, so very carefully pull them apart. I have this sped up really, really fast, but I did this very slowly. I went through and broke apart the pages I could, and then ultimately ended up going page by page very slowly to make sure that they were not stuck together. So just be careful with this last part, finishing up that book. So just be really careful because the pages can rip if you move too fast. It looks fast here, but I'm going very slowly, page by page, ripping those apart. And you could do the front cover, you could just paint the edges, or you could do the back, but I think it really brought this whole thing together and just a way to have a little bit of fun with one of my absolute favorite books and reads of the entire year.
If you have read Spark of the Everflame or the 3 books that are out so far, we're still waiting on the 4th. I would love to talk theories with you. So let me know in the comments or shoot me a message on Instagram. In my next video, I'm going to show you how to rebind from a paperback to a hardcover. So I'm going to put that video up on your screen.